Welcome to the nation's diplomatic dispatch. I'm RATNAM, and together we'll break down the key stories shaping diplomacy and international affairs. Today, we look at why Malaysia matters now. ENZO Sim, Southeast Asian History and Defense Studies researcher, joins me to talk about Malaysia at this point, and we're talking about Malaysia heading ASEAN. ENZO, thank you so much for doing this for us. It's the first time you're here on Bernama TV. I'd like to thank you for taking time off to join us. But I'd like to start here. In July, fighting broke out once again along the Thai-Cambodian border. Soldiers were killed, tensions ran high, and the fear was that a local clash could spiral into something much larger. That's what we thought back then. Now, by early August, ASEAN, with Malaysia's share, stepped in to help oversee a ceasefire. Of course, most of us have already read about this. It showed that when violence erupts, what matters most is who has the credibility to bring both sides back together. If there's a problem with the relationship, who is going to help that relationship? It's as simple as that. Now, and that's where Malaysia found itself, not only as ASEAN chair, but as the mediator. The question now is, why Malaysia and why at this moment? And the real question, however, would be, how fragile is this peace and what does it reveal about ASEAN's credibility in 2025? ENZO.
Thank you for having me, Gerard. Well, first of all, Malaysia is playing a significant role as the ASEAN chair in mediating the Thai-Cambodia border clashes, because the ability of Malaysia as the ASEAN chair in resolving this crisis and putting an end to the hostilities between both sides is key towards ensuring and upholding ASEAN's centrality. Now, the ASEAN centrality is a principle where ASEAN itself drives the region's economic and political developments and framework without the interference of foreign powers. So in order to do that, Malaysia has to show its ability as ASEAN chair to resolve ASEAN's internal problems. And that is why Malaysia has stepped up to end the violence between both sides, and to show its ability in resolving the crisis.
Right, so Malaysia stepped up, which means Malaysia didn't have to do it if it didn't want to. If say she didn't want to get involved in this, she could have just stepped back.
Yeah. So
I mentioned Malaysia as she because I still believe in the power of women. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay.
Perfect. And so Malaysia is the chair for ASEAN this year. So in this capacity, it is the obligation of Malaysia to solve any outstanding issues that were left over by previous ASEAN chairs, as well as fresh crisis that emerges during the tenure of that one-year tenure of Malaysia's ASEAN chairmanship.
Yeah. So which means there's a lot for Malaysia to deal with regards to keeping stability, keeping equilibrium, so to speak, or balance. To look for an easier term, Malaysia has to find that balance, knowing full well that geopolitically the world is different now. So I'm trying to draw from your expertise to talk about how important this is for the region and especially for Phnom Penh and Bangkok. There's just so much happening at this point, and you get people writing about it and saying no big deal, anyone can step in as a mediator. Is this a big deal or not?
It is a big deal. Well, considering the fact that this border crisis between the tensions, I would say, between Cambodia and Thailand has been ongoing since the past. Well, to give you a clear idea on how it started, it is a dispute on the interpretations of the 1907 Franco-Siamese treaty that was signed between the French colonial empire and the Kingdom of Siam at that time. Well, the current modern incarnations of the states of Thailand and Cambodia had a different interpretations of that Franco-Siamese treaty clauses. And when you look at such a long-standing issue with the 1962 ruling that was given by the International Court of Justice that awarded the 11th century ancient Khmer temple, known as the Preah Vihear temple, to Cambodia, it was disputed by Thailand at the time, the ruling. So with such a long-standing issue with that in mind, I think the ability for Malaysia to really put broker a ceasefire that holds until today, and for the time being, is something that is remarkable, because this is not the first time both countries had clashed. They had done so when border tensions flare up in 2008 and 2011. Well, at that time, Indonesia's efforts, Indonesia was the then chair of ASEAN, when Indonesia's efforts in trying to resolve the crisis were ignored by Thailand and Cambodia at that time, but not in this case when Malaysia stepped up to resolve. So we can see the diplomatic clout that Malaysia holds in terms of its position as the ASEAN chair.
Right. What would success look like in a few months from now? I guess, before the end of the year, we want to look at where Malaysia was, what she did, and what happens at the end of the year. So what would success look like then? What signs should we be looking out for?
Well, the signs are already showing. So since the successful brokering of the ceasefire following the negotiations that the peace meeting that went on between Thailand and Cambodia in Kuala Lumpur on the 28th of July, we are seeing very much progress in the form of the holding of the ceasefire, not just the full cooperation of the highest leadership levels between the Prime Minister Anwar and his counterparts in Thailand and Cambodia, but we are seeing the full cooperation and involvement of the working level. So we have the visit and the visit of Tan Sri General Nizam, who is the current Chief of Defence Force of Malaysia, his visit to Thailand and Cambodia to monitor the situation and get the latest updates from the border areas. And most importantly, we saw that both Thailand and Cambodia had shown its political willingness to resolve the crisis. Now, we are seeing improvements in terms of the calming down of political tensions. Now, a few days ago, since the new Thai Prime Minister, Anutin Janvirakul, took office as a Prime Minister, his first message and one of his first vows was to resolve the border crisis apart from stimulating Thailand's economy. So, and in response, a very rare overture had been handed over by the current Cambodian Prime Minister, Hun Manet, who replied back in terms of that he's ready to work out a peaceful resolution with the new leadership in Thailand. So Prime Minister Anutin's appointment as the new PM gave a fresh incentive towards the resolution of the entire crisis and opens up a new pathway.
A few days ago, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think there was Thai military man who stepped on a landmine, and that sort of brought about a bit of fragility here. I don't know how long ago, but this was pretty recent.
Yes.
Did anything flare up from that, or are things still calm?
Well, of course, no physical violence flare up from that, but the battle of narratives on the media is pretty much still ongoing between Thailand and Cambodia. And what I want to emphasize here is the role of the ASEAN Observers Team, which is an initiative that is put forward by Malaysia as the peace broker here, to closely monitor the ceasefire situation across the border between Thailand and Cambodia and ensure that there are no violations, and if there should be violations, it will be detected and reported by the AOT, the ASEAN.
Right, so there's a Malaysian team there monitoring the situation. You said you want to emphasize. What about this team do you want to emphasize? Are they doing a good job? Should the team be doing more, less?
They are currently doing a very, very good job in terms of monitoring the entire situation closely, because their work is, if I were to put it in one word, strenuous, because we're talking about a very wide area of border region between Cambodia and Thailand, with a lot of barren lands in between and filled with landmines. And of course, the initiative that is put forward by Malaysia is a good step towards resolving the crisis peacefully, because any border, if we take a look at border conflicts in Southeast Asia, there were a lot of examples. All of them share a commonality in terms of its peaceful resolution, meaning the eventual demarcation of the border between those countries that will eventually lead to peaceful resolution. But of course, judging from the current situation, demarcation of the border between Thailand and Cambodia would still be in the foreseeable future, not for now. But the priority now of the ASEAN Observers Team is to ensure that the ceasefire holds. And the ASEAN Observers Team not only consists of the Malaysian Armed Forces, but it also consists of defense attaches from across all ASEAN countries.
Now, Malaysia has long described itself as a bridge builder, and we're talking about from Mindanao to southern Thailand. Now, and if we talk about this ceasefire, it fits in this tradition, but it also puts ASEAN under the spotlight. Can the bloc truly lead, or will it just remain an observer? Now, that's the big question everyone's asking within the region. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll delve a little bit more into that. We'll take a quick one and come back and talk more about Malaysia here at this juncture, sitting as the chair of ASEAN, and also the other border disputes within the region. Stay with us. This is The Nation on Brindama TV. Thank you for staying with us right here on The Nation. Now, Malaysia has long described itself as a bridge builder from Mindanao to southern Thailand. When we're talking about the ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand apparently fits the tradition, or at least that's what people within the industry or political analysts say. But it also puts ASEAN under the spotlight. Can the bloc truly lead, or will it just remain just as an observer? Now, the question I have for you is, where does Malaysia fit in the larger regional picture? ENZO.
So, Malaysia, in this instance of the mediation between Thailand and Cambodia's border dispute, we can see Malaysia has truly instilled the original ASEAN spirit, in that ASEAN is an organization that could solve its own problem, and it raised the prestige of not only Malaysia as one of the founders.
Sorry, I'd like to go back. You said Malaysia has instilled the ASEAN spirit. Can you just tell us what that ASEAN spirit is?
So what I'm, to be more specific, what I'm trying to emphasize in the ASEAN spirit is the spirit of the region, the ability of member states of that organization that can come together and really resolve that particular crisis, and also face and resolve external threats together. And that goes back to 1967, when ASEAN was originally founded. So what I'm trying to say is that Malaysia's timely brokering of the ceasefire that has prevented the Thai-Cambodia border clash into spiraling out of control into a possible regional war that could pull in major powers is a very successful feat indeed. And that has raised not just Malaysia's reputation, but ASEAN's prestige as well, because ASEAN has been increasingly criticized recently because of the lack of progress on the Myanmar Civil War resolution. But this successful resolution of the brokering of the ceasefire in Thailand and Cambodia's conflict has shown the international community that Malaysia, together as the ASEAN chair, and ASEAN itself as a multilateral organization, is still pretty much relevant to the region, and it's important in keeping the region a peaceful, harmonious, and safe region that is filled with vibrancy and strong economic.
Right. So I guess back home or here in Malaysia, the message would be, or the message going out on social media would be, yeah, what did we do in order to make ASEAN happen? Like, okay, we've got the Myanmar issue, it's inching forward, but should that weight be on this government in this time, given the global situation that we have? Because it is a real child's play. If you talk to me about international politics today and tariff mania, I mean, everyone has to be nice to the next person. You don't know who you're going to upset. So it is a very stifling juncture for Malaysia. We are at this point where semuanya susah, everything is hard at this point. Even we want to do something, we need to think 10 steps ahead before making that one move. Now, my question is, should the weight be on Malaysia if nothing is happening with the whole Myanmar situation, or that blame should be on ASEAN itself?
Well, it is not fair to put the entire burden or blame on Malaysia itself, because when you talk about the Myanmar civil war, it is something that has been going on since the independence of the country as Burma from the British in 1948, and it is more of a region-wide effort that could engineer progress in terms of peace negotiations and the path towards peace in Myanmar. So,
yeah. So one thing I'd like to add in is outside powers. We've got China, we've got the US.
Yes.
Do they take ASEAN more seriously now that Malaysia sits at the helm of ASEAN, or as the chair of ASEAN?
You're absolutely right, Gerard, because the involvement of the major powers, namely the United States and China, is very crucial towards ensuring that the peace holds in this Cambodia-Thai crisis. Because the United States and China are two major powers that has direct stakes in this region, especially in regards with Myanmar as well, and especially in terms of Cambodia and Thailand, because Cambodia is the most steadfast ally in terms of economy and defense ties with China, while the U.S. is Thailand is the traditional security ally of the U.S. in the region.
Now, having said that, I'd like to segue to something else. Now, while ASEAN is dealing with border clashes, there's another track unfolding. In late August, Australia's Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister, his name is Richard Marles, he was in Kuala Lumpur and Manila, and this was to deepen defence ties with both countries. It's a reminder that diplomacy and defence move together in this region. Now, when we spoke earlier, you pointed out Australia's role. You wanted to bring this into the conversation. Why did you see this as important to link this with the Thai-Cambodia situation?
Well, because Australia is pretty much a traditional security partner and economic partner of the Asia-Pacific region, especially with Malaysia. When in the Second World War, when the Japanese started invading down south into Southeast Asia, Australia suddenly sensed the importance of the region towards its own security, because it saw Southeast Asia as a gateway towards Australia and New Zealand. And whatever that is happening in Southeast Asia matters very much to Australia. And that is why they have devised the so-called forward defense policy. So that forward defense policy is where the Australia, together with its Australian Defence Force, have been proactively identifying their defense priorities in Asia Pacific, and actively forging new defense partnerships and deepening the existing ones with their partners across the Asia Pacific, in Southeast Asia, especially with Malaysia.
Now, I guess the million-dollar question here is, how does this shift, or rather this working with Australia, affect Malaysia's balancing act between China and the US at this point?
So, as you know, Malaysia has currently extensive trade and defense ties, economic ties, and foreign direct investments coming in from China, together with Malaysia's participation in the BRI, or the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
So, in order to balance the so-called balance of power in the region, and of course Malaysia's own bilateral relations with China, it is a crucial step for Malaysia to forge cooperation in terms of defense with multiple partners, not just Australia. But since Australia's geographical location is within the Asia-Pacific context, Australia has emerged as a very important partner for Malaysia to hedge against its other international partners.
Right.
And keeping in mind, Australia is one of the ASEAN Plus dialogue partners.
I've got two questions for you before I end. The first one's rather simple. For ordinary Malaysians, why should these defense agreements matter? Why should they know about this or even read about it?
Yeah, so it might seem pretty remote for a lot of ordinary folks out there, but I have to remind about the importance of these defense agreements, because by having a balanced defense cooperation with multiple partners across the globe, it is a crucial step to ensure that the region remains a stable, a prosperous, and harmonious region. Imagine if South China Sea were to witness a maritime conflict, happening in between superpowers, and seeing the region wedged between superpowers like the United States and China, with such instability and volatility across the oceans. Our livelihoods will be affected in the form of skyrocketing food prices, because and skyrocketing cost of living as well, because the ocean and the waterway, the South China Sea, is the maritime gateway where...
We've got 1 minute left. One last question for you. Does this partnership with Australia strengthen ASEAN centrality, or does it highlight the limits in ASEAN?
So it pretty much strengthens the ASEAN centrality, because by forging partnerships in defense and economy with multiple partners across the region, it ensures that the delicate balance of power in the region remains a balanced act, and ASEAN does not side too much to any of the major powers, and that is how ASEAN centrality is upheld.
Hold on, ENZO. Malaysia's role extends well beyond its borders. It's about diplomacy, dialogue, and ensuring ASEAN's voice remains central in regional affairs. I'm GERARD RATNAM. Thanks for watching, and stay with us for more right here, or more conversations on diplomacy and international affairs that matter, only on Bernama TV. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you for having me.